the lord of karma and the impartial auditor of the earthly world, the formidable master of time, the planet symbolizing order, discipline, limitations, and control. The planet Saturn on May 25, 2025, transitions into the fiery sign of Aries, where it will remain, with a brief interruption, until mid-April 2028. What to expect from this transit of the planet Saturn, what the whole world and each of the zodiac signs should expect. In which sphere of life will Saturn arrange a strict audit for each of us? Let's talk about this in detail. Let's start with the exact dates of Saturn's transit through the sign of Aries. On May 25, 2025, Saturn enters this sign with its first visit, which will last until September 1, 2025. And then Saturn will return to this sector on February 14, 2026, and will remain in this sign until April 13, 2028. Therefore now, from the end of May 2025 until September, that is, the entire summer of 2025, is an important time for each of us, when Saturn for the first time enters a new sign, and accordingly a new sphere of our life, and begins its strict audit. This can be compared to a boss or a representative of some controlling authority bursting into our office and saying, "Come on, all the reports, documents, all the accounting, I will now check everything thoroughly." And while you are frantically gathering everything necessary, all the documents, he says, "I am on my lunch break now. I will return in a few hours and check everything strictly." That is, in fact, now in the summer of 2025, you have time to feel in which particular sphere of life and what kind of inspection Saturn will conduct for you. And then from September to February, you have time to prepare for this inspection. And about in which sphere of life each of the zodiac signs can expect such an inspection, a strict audit, we will talk with you in detail. But let's first discuss what the general influence of Saturn's transit through the sign of Aries might be for our world. Saturn is the load-bearing structure of our world. It is the image of rigidity on which all management and control rests. The symbol of Saturn is laws, rules, limitations. It is inspections, audits, and control, including self-discipline. It is also submission and responsibility. And every 3 years, Saturn changes signs, moving into a new zodiac sign, and accordingly, the sphere of life that is currently under Saturn's control and inspection changes. Precisely in that sphere of life where the transiting Saturn is located, we have to face some limitations, with the power of rules and laws, with some difficulties and obstacles, and also with additional responsibility. The movement of Saturn through the zodiac circle from sign to sign can be compared to a strict inspector coming to your house with a checklist and saying, "Now I will check everything point by point, all spheres of life. Personal life, work, relationships with relatives, order in the house, the ability to plan your life, the ability to be disciplined." That is, everything step by step. And as soon as this inspector, this strict auditor, has filled all the fields in his checklist, in his document, immediately the next inspector comes, who starts everything anew but already on a different level. And the process of these inspections lasts cyclically. That is, it happens constantly, just in different life aspects. One cycle of inspections is one full circle of Saturn, which is 30 years, and then a new one begins, but already on a different level. And for our entire world, the sign of Aries is the first house of the horoscope. It is like the entrance doors to our house, to our space. Therefore, precisely now, at the moment when Saturn crosses the border between Pisces and Aries, which will happen on May 25, 2025, this can be compared to a new auditor, Saturn, entering your doors. Saturn personifies rules, personifies the management of our world, laws, and some established orders. And before crossing the sign of Aries, that is, before a new cycle of Saturn begins for the whole world, he spends the previous 3 years in the space of the sign of Pisces. And the sign of Pisces symbolically is the 12th house of the horoscope for our world. It is a symbol of dissolution, completion, and preparation for a new stage. And in the sign of Pisces, Saturn is uncomfortable. Here he encounters the fact that his rules, his orders no longer work. While Saturn is moving through the sign of Pisces, I remind you, this is the period from March 2023 to the present moment. This is a time when the system of management encounters the fact that the existing rules, the rules of management, the management of earthly affairs, and the minds of people. All this encounters some insurmountable difficulties. A mismatch with the spirit of the times and modern challenges hinders scientific and technological progress and introduces many restrictions on the freedoms of people. This is symbolically the time of an iron curtain, because if people understand that it is possible to do things differently, then they can no longer be restrained. If they see that there is another path, that there is an alternative. Therefore, when Saturn steps over this boundary between Pisces and Aries, it shows that the time has come for innovation, significant innovation in the very structure of managing the world and the minds of people. The time has come for a change in the very model of power. While Saturn is moving through the sign of Pisces, I remind you, this has been happening since March 2023 to the present moment. Often for many people, this gives a subconscious expectation of something, that something will soon end. But while Saturn is in Pisces, it does not end, and we intuitively wait. Everyone waits for something. And now, on May 25, 2025, for the first time in 30 years, Saturn steps over this boundary. Therefore, the summer of 2025 will be hot in every sense. What specifically can be expected throughout this transit of Saturn, which will last until mid-April 2028? The previous transit of Saturn through the sign of Aries took place in the period from 1996 to 1999. Before that, from 1967 to 1969. But this transit of Saturn will be different from all previous ones, since it will proceed hand in hand with the planet Neptune. The sign of Aries, in which all this mystery will take place, is a symbol of personality, individuality. Therefore, this is a time when we do not want to be like everyone else, and this is very important. We do not want to fit in, to conform, not to stand out, and also we do not want to hide something about ourselves. And here, no matter how they suppress our individuality, no matter how they suggest to us what we should be like, we do not give up. And since the very energy of Aries is so warlike, Aries is the domicile of Mars, we in this period are inclined not just to act in our own way, contrary to some rules, we do it demonstratively. Therefore, this is a period when there will be a great multitude of all kinds of social and collective movements against something or for something, since the planet Neptune will give all this mass character, and the sign of Aries will give it militancy. For example, a person wants to walk not with a dog on a leash, but with a cat, and he will not just walk with a cat on a leash. He will walk at the same time with a placard for the right of cats to walk, and not just do it himself, but also unite into collectives of people who are also interested in walking on the street with cats on a leash. This is, of course, exaggerated, but it will help to understand how exactly this energy will influence us. In general, this period of Saturn's transit and the planet Neptune simultaneously through the sign of Aries, and their conjunction, which in essence is already happening and will last until mid-2026, plus or minus, is the time of the birth of the ideology of the New World. That is, a new ideology. And since this is happening in the sign of Aries, it is a rather militant ideology based on individualism in everything. And this will really be visible in the most diverse aspects, both in fashion and in politics. At the same time, during this transit, both Saturn and Neptune will be in a tense aspect, in a square, to the sign of Capricorn, which is a symbol of traditional power. Therefore, this is a time when there can be a great multitude of all kinds of protests, both against the authorities and against each other. This is a period when people, so to speak, non-standard, yes, the transit of Saturn and Neptune through the sign of Aries will bring a number of pivotal plots in our world. The transit of Saturn and Neptune through the sign of Aries requires from us honesty, both individual and collective honesty, requires from us honesty before ourselves, and the courage to call things by their proper names. This seems simple, but it is difficult. Serious attention during this transit will be paid to climate changes, which are already obvious and are happening, developing. They are really happening very quickly. Also, Saturn personifies the platform on which everything rests. He personifies, in essence, the solid ground, and Neptune is called the great agitator of the earth. It is a symbol of water that moves very quickly. Therefore, this is a time when there can be very strong storms and also serious earthquakes with the shift of some plates. Serious attention will also be paid to firefighting systems, especially for forest fires or mountain fires, and here in the Balkans, This is indeed a serious problem. Critically little precipitation, dry hot air, and also difficult access to some places. Last summer, there were a great many serious fires. Also, this is a time when the level of the world ocean will rise significantly. And this can be a problem since Saturn personifies ice and Neptune is water, and they are together in the space of the sign of Aries, which symbolizes fire and high temperature. Therefore, this can be a serious, active, and fast period of glacier melting. Also, this is a time when a person of a new format may come to power, and this may seem interesting and something new. Nevertheless, this person may not possess a sufficient level and experience in managing large systems, and he may make a number of such extravagant decisions that, during the next transit of Saturn through this sign, that is, in 30 years, they will remind of themselves, and in a negative key. At the level of interpersonal relationships, the period of this transit is a difficult time when it is hard to find compromises, since Saturn in Aries will be located diametrically opposite to the sign of Libra, which symbolizes diplomacy and our ability to negotiate with each other. Therefore, this is a time when everyone will insist on their own, when it can be difficult to negotiate with each other. Especially acute, the inability to negotiate, the inability to hear each other, the inability to find mutually beneficial compromises in interpersonal communication. This can manifest in June 2025 and also in August of this year. Let's now talk separately for each of the zodiac signs. In which sphere of life should you expect Saturn's audit? Aries. The transit of Saturn through your sign is, of course, an extremely responsible time for you. This is, on the one hand, the moment of the beginning of a 30-year cycle of your development, and on the other hand, these are 3 years of Saturn's inspections. This is a time of inspections for the correspondence of form and content. The transit of Saturn through the previous sign, that is, from March 2023 to the present moment, until the end of May 2025. During this time, Saturn was in your 12th astro field, and this created prerequisites for many changes in your life. This created prerequisites for the completion of some programs of the past. This could have become a time of parting with something, for example, with an idea, illusions, or a time when you admitted to yourself mistakes that you made. Someone could have parted with a previous way of life, and someone with their place of residence and moved. Someone's very idea of the world around us changed. This time gave you the opportunity to draw some conclusions, correct your mistakes, and also feel out some guidelines for the future. You could ask yourself the questions, who do I want to become? And this is not about the mundane, it is about the inner, true essence of things. There will be another small period from September 2025 to February 2026, when Saturn will briefly return to your 12th astro field. And this gives such a final opportunity to draw conclusions, correct mistakes, and to some extent turn the page of the past. For some, the previous period of Saturn's transit, which is now coming to an end, could have been a period when you encountered some limitations. Or, for example, with maternity leave, that is, a time when you somewhat distanced yourself from your usual lifestyle. For some, this could have been a time of restoring their own health. What to expect now from the end of May 2025 until mid-April 2028? Saturn is the great ascetic. He brings cleansing from everything superficial, pompous, from that which is dictated by vanity, ego, pride, or fashion, from that which is not inherent to us in reality. He tears off from us unnecessary masks and roles that either we do not correspond to, or they do not correspond to us, do not correspond to our nature and our purpose. He, in essence, helps us to become who we are. And this may not be easy, especially for those who are experiencing their first experience of Saturn in the sign of Aries. That is, for those who are now less than 30 years old. If for you this is already the second or third cycle of Saturn, then you are already familiar with its energies. With its influence, you have already lived through this. Now there will also be a check. But at a higher level, if you remember the time from 1996 to 1999, then now you are living through the second cycle of Saturn. And if you remember the time from 1967 to 1969, then now for you is the third cycle of Saturn. Saturn demands from us responsibility for our destiny and can compel us to this, for example, through financial responsibility. If you lived off your parents or off your partner in your personal life, then now Saturn will demand that you take care of yourself independently. This does not speak of any problems, but simply of an internal desire to be independent from a financial point of view from other people. This is a time when Saturn will teach you the law of 100% responsibility for everything that happens to you in your destiny. That is, here you do not need to blame someone else. For example, blame your parents for not giving you something, that they did not give love, care, attention, or a good education, or, for instance, your own housing. Or you do not need to blame your partner in your personal life for not meeting your expectations, because it was you who built the relationship with them. You yourself chose this partner. And your soul itself chose your parents, and they gave you what they could. That is, this is a time when you need to learn not to blame another person for anything, to ask yourself, what actions and decisions of mine led to me ending up in such a situation? Also, Saturn gives cold and compression. It is the energy of clear forms and asceticism. Therefore, usually the transit of Saturn through one's own sign is a time when we are less interested in a large number of outfits and clothes than in some other periods. This is a time when we are more interested in internal content than in the external picture. And usually in this period, we either shop less often, or we choose rather strict clothing of dark colors, or we may have a job that requires us to wear a uniform. The transit of Saturn through one's own sign often gives a feeling of inner loneliness. Moreover, not factual. In fact, you may be surrounded by loving, caring people, but here a feeling of inner loneliness remains, as if no one is able to understand you completely, as if you are left alone with yourself and with the world, as if no one fully understands everything that is happening in your thoughts and feelings. This period can give an increased need for periodic solitude, in silence, and in being alone with your thoughts. Saturn is the ruler of the sign of Capricorn, and in your horoscope, this is the 10th astro field, the sector of achievements and success, the sector that shows our step on the social and career ladder. This is an excellent time to determine the height of the peak that you will subsequently storm, that is, to determine the height of the bar of your achievements that you will strive for. That is, these 3 years are an excellent time for solving global tasks in work, career, your own business, acquiring your own housing. And also, this is a time when you can start a family. That is, take responsibility for another person, for relationships in the family, or for the birth of a child. However, Saturn is a strict and demanding planet. Therefore, it gives achievement indeed significant, but this is as a result of one's own efforts, labor, and self-discipline. This is not an easy time, but it is precisely this time that will give you both goals and meanings, and such results that you will be able to be proud of for many years. Taurus. Saturn transitions into your 12th astro field, and this transit sets before you a whole series of tasks which essentially boil down to 2 main directions. The first of which is the summing up of results, and this is indeed an important and global task, since for your sign, a long cycle of Saturn is now ending, and the next sign that Saturn will visit will already be precisely your sign. Therefore, you are now summing up the results of Saturn's 30-year cycle, if of course you are over 30 years old. If you are under 30 years old, then you are accordingly summing up the results for the past years of your life. And the results that we will have to sum up under Saturn are so honest. Here you cannot hide anything, you cannot embellish anything. This is a time when Saturn will literally ask you, what have you achieved? And here it's not entirely about the material, it's about something else. Who am I without embellishment, without masks, without tinsel? What is our strength? What is our core of life? You know, it's an assessment of what essentially cannot be taken away from us, who we really are. Saturn is always harsh, but honest. This is a time when we honestly admit to ourselves what mistakes we have made over these years, and not mistakes in trivial matters, but global ones. And not just admit these mistakes to ourselves, but also try to correct them where it is possible. The second line that Saturn will take up here is the task of building, based on the work on mistakes, a new strategy for your life. And here again, it's about the global. Here the question is, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? Here it's not about the mundane, not about the intention to buy a new home or a new dress. Here it's about the inner essence, the essence of things. And your inner work right now will help you greatly when Saturn transitions into your sign. In general, Saturn's transit gives us the feeling that we are beginning to live anew, that we have moved to a new level, that we are beginning a new chapter of our life. For now, we are beginning it not in practice, but inside. That is, it is a moment of, to some extent, saying goodbye to the past. How can this transit of Saturn manifest at the event level? The 12th house is the house of immigration, and quite often with such a transit, people move, not necessarily to another country, but they move somewhere, and it seems to them that here they are starting a new life. The 12th house is the house of what is hidden. Therefore, during the period of such a Saturn transit, we, as a rule, sort out some accumulations of things. We engage in equipping storage rooms or walk-in closets. We engage in cleaning and establishing a structural order in our closet or on our shelves, in our drawers. That is, we engage in putting things in order and cleansing our space of unnecessary things in such hidden areas of our home. This could also be some reorganization of your garage or, for example, a dacha. The 12th house is also a sector of seclusion, and here someone might visit a sanatorium or a rest home more often, travel somewhere, or spend more time at their dacha. It could also be work in seclusion, working from home, or working in a separate office, in a separate space. This could also be work that involves business trips, travel, with periodic residence in the place where this work is performed. Or it could be, for example, a sailor or a person who goes to earn money abroad or in some other city, or works on a shift basis. There could be other reasons for such seclusion here, for example, pregnancy, childcare, maternity leave. It could also be retirement or starting your own business, when we work for ourselves and there is no need to visit a specific place. That is, for example, a work office. We work where it is convenient for us. The 12th house of your horoscope shows us the sector of work and health of your partner in your personal life. Therefore, circumstances may develop such that the schedule of your partner's employment can have such a restraining, limiting influence on your plans. For example, a partner might work at night and accordingly sleep at home during the day, rest, and you are forced to adjust to their schedule. That is, for example, not to make noise to let them rest. This can manifest in other ways as well. That is, the schedule and structure of our partner's employment has such a limiting and restraining influence on our own plans. The 12th house is also the house of charity, the house of sacrifice. Therefore, this is a time when you can help someone, for example, take care of someone, visit someone in the hospital, or help someone restore their health. That is, show care for someone. The 12th house is also the house of chronic diseases, and this is a time when you can take care of your health, and systematically, not one time. Not when something hurts, we took some pill and tried to forget about it. This is such systematic work, care for your health condition. When, for example, we really do a comprehensive examination, when we select the right vitamins for ourselves, when we choose the right, beneficial type of physical activity for us. That is, when we take care of ourselves on such a constant basis, and not one time. This is also periodically undergoing a course of massage, or when we take a course of vitamins, dietary supplements, when we regularly play sports or practice yoga, qigong, energy practices, or herbal medicine. And since the sign of Aries, in which Saturn will be located, at the level of our physical organism, shows the head and everything located in this area. That is, these are headaches, blood pressure, and the thyroid gland. These are eyes, vision, or hearing. This shows that it is precisely these spheres that need attention. For example, engage in some practices that improve vision or improve the condition of the thyroid gland, or improve the general well-being, what will give you a really good, correct level of your blood pressure. Also, the 12th house is the house of bad habits and addictions, and here Saturn literally demands that we stop doing this, leave our bad habits in the past. Also, the 12th house is the house of secrets, of what we hide, and Saturn here really conducts an audit. He pushes us to the thought that having some secrets, hiding something, is not beneficial for us ourselves, that we need to free ourselves from this. For example, if we are talking about secret relationships that could last for many years, then now you may feel that you are tired of everything, hiding all this. You cannot go on like this. You need to make decisions. This, of course, can relate not only to the spheres of a love triangle. In general, the transit of Saturn through the 12th house will give you a feeling of such purification of your life and its transformation. Yes, there may be some losses here, karmically conditioned losses. But nevertheless, this period will give you the feeling that you are starting life anew, at least in one of the spheres of your life. Gemini. For your sign, the transition of Saturn into the sign of Aries is very good news, since Saturn is leaving the space of your 10th astro field, where it has been since March 2023. This was a difficult time for you, when Saturn conducted an inspection and a strict audit of the sector of your life that is responsible for your position on the social and career ladder. Saturn in this sphere could give additional load, additional duties for which you might not have been ready. That is, Saturn in this sector conducted a strict assessment of the correspondence of form and content, and this concerned your step on the social and career ladder, your obligations, your duties, the circle of your responsibility, your authority, your professional reputation, and in general your work and career, and also your social position. This was indeed a difficult inspection, but it remains in the past. Throughout this period, that is, since March 2023, it might have been not easy to advance on the career ladder. Either you had to work a lot, and the result was hardly noticeable, or some external factors, laws, external circumstances, over which you have no power, they could slow down the process of your development. And at the same time, Saturn is not only about inspection, checks, and limitations. Saturn, when it leaves this sign, gives truly generous gifts. It generously rewards the person who did not give up. It rewards for labor, patience, and endurance. And now, when Saturn transitions into your 11th astro field, the inspector and auditor becomes the one who helps you. Saturn in the 11th astro field of your horoscope will be in a favorable aspect relative to your sign, and here he is no longer an examiner, he is a helper. You will immediately feel that it has become easier. In which specific spheres of life, in which life situations, can this influence of Saturn manifest itself? The first sphere in which it will manifest itself is the sphere of your social circle. These are friends, acquaintances, your like-minded people, and collectives in which you take some part. Saturn here will conduct a cleansing, an audit. He may remove unnecessary, unhelpful, and non-constructive connections for you. For example, a person might leave a job where they work together with a large collective of people, and accordingly, they will no longer interact with them. Or a person might sharply reduce the circle of people with whom they communicate on a friendly basis. You know, Saturn in this sector, as if it changes quantity for quality. For example, you worked with a large collective of people, and now circumstances change, and you will cooperate with a few, with 1 or 2 or 3 people, but these will be really serious working relationships. Saturn in this sector shows us serious people and serious intentions. For example, a person might move to a higher position, and accordingly, they will no longer communicate with performers in work, but with those who own a certain business, with those who occupy a higher position. Or in this period, you might give up wasting time on communicating with unknown people through social networks. The second aspect that Saturn will take up is the questions of your goals and your image of the future. Saturn in this sector simply will not let you drift with the flow to an unknown destination. He will literally demand from you such an integral and clear picture of where you are going, what you want, what future you are building. In what exactly will Saturn help you during this period? The 11th house is the house of our picture of the future, and Saturn will help you find your path. Moreover, here there will really be something new for you, because the 11th house is the house of progress, and progress happens when we understand something new, when we study something. This period can bring you a long stage of learning a new business. This is a good time for the realization of serious and long-term plans related to development. Also, Saturn in this sector gives a new level of responsibility, or rather, the awareness of one's responsibility before another person or collective. For example, you might become a manager and will be responsible for the actions of your employees. Or, for example, this might become a period when you feel that it is time to stop any intrigues, flirting, that absolute loyalty to your partner in your personal life is needed. Or you will start your own business and will bear responsibility for the quality of the work performed before your clients. If you are in search of a partner in your personal life for really serious relationships with serious intentions, then the time of this transit is a wonderful stage, because Saturn in the sector of your 11th astro field is in an aspect of luck relative to the sector of your marriage. Therefore, this is a time when you really can find that person with whom you can build serious relationships. At the same time, you might be introduced to your future partner by your mutual friends, or it could be an acquaintance through the internet. Also, Saturn itself symbolizes a serious, strict person who can be trusted. That is, a person who keeps their promises, who provides some patronage, but at the same time strictly evaluates. Therefore, this is a time when you can find the patronage you are looking for. For example, find the right person who will help you, for instance, open your own business. That is, this is a period when you can find that patronage, that help and support, find that influential person who will help you solve your issues. Also, the 11th house is the sector that symbolizes other people's children. That is, children who appear in our lives but are not our own children. And Saturn in this sector gives more responsibility in this regard. That is, this is a period when, for example, your close friends might have children, or you might have a nephew or niece, and you will one way or another help this child in something or interact in some way. There may also be some limitations that appear in your life in connection with other people's children. For example, you might enter into a relationship with a person who already has children from his or her previous relationships, and you will need to somehow find an approach and possibly limit yourself in something for the benefit of these children. Also, the 11th house symbolizes our brothers and sisters, and Saturn in this sector requires improving relationships. That is, if there were any mistakes in the relationships, then you need to try to correct them. Also, Saturn in this sector requires that we do not spend a lot of time on unknown things. For example, if you open your phone, open YouTube or some social networks, then this should have the goal of searching for some specific information, and not just aimlessly scrolling through the news feed. In general, this is a time when your serious initiatives, which really have goals and meanings underneath them, and not just desires, will be actively and favorably supported by Saturn. Cancer. In your horoscope, Saturn is leaving the 9th astro field since the beginning of March 2023, and Saturn during this time was in a favorable aspect relative to your sign. Here he was not conducting an inspection, but on the contrary, he was helping you in your intellectual development and spiritual development. Here, Saturn provided you with support in matters related to learning. This could be classical education or self-education. Also, Saturn provided support here in matters related to trips, moving, or solving some issues that are somehow connected with something foreign. Saturn provided assistance in solving bureaucratic issues or processing some documents. For some, this period brought the birth of grandchildren. This is both great joy and new responsibility. Also, Saturn here provided assistance in the development of one's professionalism. Someone might have obtained a new scientific status, for example, received a diploma of education, or received some documents related to their qualification. Or, for instance, studied a foreign language and received the corresponding documents. Someone might have developed their business of an intellectual nature, a business connected with cooperation with other organizations, companies, primarily foreign ones. Someone in this period might have found new friends, and these could be people from afar, visitors, or foreigners. Saturn in this sector taught you to plan your life, and to plan it differently, in general, to think in other categories. Now Saturn transitions into the 10th astro field of your horoscope, and a period of greater responsibility begins, since Saturn will be in a tense aspect relative to your sign, and this obliges you to a lot. Saturn in the 10th astro field of the horoscope, where it transitions now and will be for 3 years, will load you with responsibility for which you may not be entirely ready. Saturn in the 10th astro field is the highest point of the horoscope. This is the house of our status, our career, our position on the social ladder, our reputation, our achievements. This is the house of power. And here Saturn comes with an audit, with a check, and he begins to ask questions. How much does a person really understand what he manages, what he leads? Does he know all the intricacies of this matter? Does he know all the technological processes? Does he control the compliance of his activities with all bureaucratic nuances? Does he control the work of his accounting department? That is, Saturn literally asks, are you really that person, or are you just pretending to be him? Of course, this is an example. That is, Saturn conducts an audit, an assessment of how much our external image, Our external form corresponds to the internal reality, how much we correspond to the role we play, how much our affairs are really under our control, how responsible we are at least for ourselves. Through which specific spheres of life and situations can this influence of Saturn manifest itself? The first sector is, of course, work and career. Saturn here, on one hand, loads us with new obligations, a new level of responsibility for which we may not be fully ready. For example, we might get a higher position that we, on one hand, wanted, it was interesting to us. But on the other hand, having received this position, we suddenly understand how difficult it is, what a great responsibility it is, and how much we still do not know in this sphere. And now we somehow need to cope with this, somehow pull all this. Really need to. The second aspect is a test of patience, especially again in important matters or matters related to work and career. Here Saturn does not give quick results. He requires from us patience, consistency, and persistence. That is, if we work in some organization, then here there might be either not very quick advancement on the career ladder, or it might seem to us that double standards are applied to us, and the management evaluates us very strictly. Or a new boss at work is such a person with whom it is difficult to deal, a demanding person, an uncompromising and capricious person. Or, for example, work that requires strict reporting to state and controlling bodies, and the official with whom we deal might be a person who is very difficult to communicate with, who presents some strange, illogical, and very strict demands towards us. Or your own business, which may not develop quickly, where various kinds of obstacles may arise, or some external factors that seem to slow down the development of our business. But Saturn in this sector expects that we will not give up. No matter how difficult it is, no matter how much our affairs advance with a creak, because when Saturn leaves this astrofield in 3 years, then he will really generously gift you with what you actually deserve. The third sphere of Saturn's influence is the test for responsibility and self-discipline. Saturn requires from us discipline in our affairs. And if we ourselves do not create some schedule of employment for ourselves, if we do not adhere to the rules of our own self-discipline, if we just go with the flow, then a person or situation may appear in our life that will discipline us from the outside. That is, here either we ourselves plan our life and strictly adhere to our plans, our discipline, or this discipline comes from outside in the form of, for example, a strict boss, or work that has such an irregular working day where there are emergencies, and where generally very strict discipline is maintained. Or you might have, for example, a child or a grandchild, and here we accordingly restructure our life schedule, our rhythm, according to the needs and cares for our child or grandchild. That is, either we ourselves strictly build our schedule and follow it, or such a person or circumstances appear in our life that influence us. Saturn in this sector also requires clarity and specificity in our affairs, requires certainty. For example, if you work in some sphere, it means you need to have a diploma of the corresponding specialized education. Or if you are a freelancer and work for yourself, then everything must be formalized officially. Or if you are in a civil marriage, it means it's probably time to officially formalize your relationship. Or, on the contrary, you haven't lived with your marriage partner for a long time and are planning to divorce, but haven't gotten around to it, and Saturn shows that the time has come for this. That is, the time has come to obtain an official status that corresponds to the real state of affairs. Also, the transit of Saturn through your 10th astrofield will give a tense aspect to the sector that symbolizes our home, our place of residence, and our real estate. Therefore, here too there may be certain tasks that will need to be solved. Related to obtaining a residence permit, citizenship, selling real estate, or re-registering some important documents. Yes, Saturn in this sector gives a really big load, but this is a time that will teach you a lot and give you a lot, and then, over time, you will be grateful for this period that helped you acquire what you have. Leah. In your horoscope, Saturn is leaving the space of the 8th astrofield and transitioning into the 9th. That is, since March 2023, Saturn has been in your 8th astrofield, in the area of your life that is responsible for shared and joint finances and resources, for shared joint property, the common budget. And Saturn in this sphere during this time increased the level of your responsibility in financial matters. It acted in matters concerning taxes, common property, financial responsibility, alimony, receiving social payments. These are also issues related to joint property, for example, issues related to receiving an inheritance. These are also issues related to banks, financial organizations, issues of using common shared funds. And Saturn in this sector could have shown you that you need to rely only on yourself. Some people during this period learn to save money, economize, or invest their money, their resources, into what is truly useful, into what becomes a source of passive income. That is, Saturn here taught you to use your funds rationally and to invest, and also to save money. Some people during this period face the necessity of taking all their financial matters into their own hands and relying only on themselves. Some might have started their own business, and this is already a new level of responsibility and financial settlements. Some might have entered into marriage, and here already there is common property, a common budget, and accordingly, joint control of this money. Now, however, Saturn is transitioning into a more favorable aspect relative to your sign. It is transitioning into your 9th astro field, where it will remain for 3 years. Now you can expect support, luck, and favorable opportunities. However, Saturn is still not the generous Jupiter. Saturn gives a lot but also demands a lot from us. He is not a generous uncle like Jupiter. He is a strict but fair teacher. Therefore, you will still have to work hard in the sector of the 9th house of the horoscope. What exactly might this be? In which spheres of life can the influence of Saturn manifest itself? The 9th house, in which it will be located, is the space of our strategic goals, and Saturn here will teach you to have a more distant planning horizon. He will teach us that we should not grab onto short-term projects, that we need to take on truly global and long-term endeavors. For example, when we plant a tree, understanding in advance that it will bear its first fruits no sooner than in 4 or even 5 years. That is, Saturn in this sector, so to speak, teaches us to play the long game, and this is really important, especially for older people. The further the horizon of your planning and your goals, the longer your life. For young people, this is, for example, like entering an institute, understanding in advance that you will have to study for about 5 or even 6 years. But we are ready for this. We understand that in the future this will really give us a certain foundation on which we can rely. Or this, for example, could be learning a foreign language. Yes, we understand that this is not a matter of one day. It's a big task, it takes time, but we understand that it will be useful to us, and we are ready to start such a process. That is, Saturn in this sector teaches us not to be afraid to start such matters that are not resolved in one day, that require a long time, but in the future will become a platform for us, relying on which we can develop and feel more confident. Also, the 9th house is the sector of justice and jurisprudence, and here Saturn will conduct a review of how truly in order your legal and bureaucratic affairs are, how in order your documents are, whether everything is processed as needed. Often during the period of such a transit, we process some documents or reprocess them. A passport, residence permit, diploma, work permit, license, insurance policy, or, for example, a driver's license, marriage certificate, or child's birth certificate. This is a time when we can visit a notary or some state institution in order to process the documents we need. Saturn in your 9th astro field, relative to your 3rd house of the horoscope, what does this tell us? Saturn in this sector will literally force you to change your habits. It will show you that it is precisely our daily habits that shape our space of opportunities. After all, if every day we do everything habitually, do everything as we always do, then should we expect results different from those we have? Perhaps we really need to change something in our habits and in our usual daily routine in order to get different results. It is important to remind yourself every day of your goal and strictly ask yourself, what exactly today did I do to achieve my goal? Did I take at least a step, but in the direction of my goal? Or, on the contrary, what I did during the day only moves me away from the desired result? That is, Saturn in this sector literally requires from us concentration on our goal. And believe me, this really helps. If every day you remind yourself what our goal is, and ask yourself what exactly today I can do for this, for achieving the result I need, then this will really help you achieve what you want in the shortest possible time. Also, Saturn in the 9th house If, of course, this is relevant for you by age, then grandchildren may appear here. This is a new level of responsibility. It is, of course, both a great joy and at the same time a factor that forces us to restructure our life rhythm, our schedule, according to the needs of our grandson or granddaughter. If you have adult children, then this is a time when your child may enter into marriage, start a family, and accordingly, they will probably have less free time to communicate with you. For some, this period will bring marriage, and the partner may have relatives with a very rigid system of values and beliefs that may contradict yours. And here it is very important to maintain respectful relationships with each other. Saturn in this sector will help you in developing foreign partnerships, in developing your intellectual activity. These are any spheres, so to speak, of intellectual labor: advertising, publications, some scientific works, cooperation with foreign companies, or the internet. Setting long-term and truly serious goals. Virgo. For your sign, Saturn is transitioning from the space of the 7th astro field into the 8th. And for you, this is good news, because since March 2023 until the end of May 2025, Saturn was in a tense aspect relative to your sign. In fact, it was standing opposite you. This is an opposition or confrontation in astrology. This aspect is called the heavy gaze of Shani. This is the second name of Saturn. What could this have given you? That is, from March 2023 until the end of May 2025, these were limitations related to affairs in the sphere of relationships. This is responsibility in relationships. This is getting rid of illusions. This is additional load and responsibility associated with the affairs of your partners. This is a feeling of pressure on yourself from your partners. At the same time, Saturn in this sector gives selectivity. Therefore, probably only verified and truly reliable people on whom one can rely remained next to you. Now Saturn is transitioning into your 8th astro field until mid-April 2028. It will inspect the financial sector of your horoscope, which is responsible for common and joint finances, resources, and property. On which specific processes in life can the influence of Saturn be reflected? What do you need to be prepared for? The first sphere is mutual settlements with the state. Here we are talking about various kinds of compensations, payments, social benefits, subsidies, as well as benefits, taxes, and fines. Here there will be stricter reporting or stricter rules regarding the processing of necessary documents. The second sphere is mutual settlements with banks. Here there may be a stricter system with more checks, more restrictions and limits. The third sphere is common and joint property, and this issue really needs to be treated with all seriousness and responsibility. For example, when acquiring housing or some other property with your own funds while being married, you need to be sure, not just sure in words, but on the basis of some legal document, that your rights in this regard will be protected. Or when buying a joint office space, for instance, with your business partners, you need to be sure that everything here is really processed legally and correctly. It is important to process everything not in words, but really legally and documentarily. And the legal side of financial issues, even between close people, should be taken seriously. For example, you are taking care of your grandmother, and your brother generally lives in another country and does not help you in any way, which means a will should be properly processed so that you specifically receive your grandmother's apartment as an inheritance. This also includes a marriage contract and a business partnership agreement. This is an excellent time for developing your own business. However, it is advisable to do this not through borrowed funds. This is a time when debts and loans may not be as useful as they seem. If you do take a loan, it should be for a real and reliable business plan, and not just for an idea that may turn out to be a mirage. Saturn in this sector teaches us to save money and to treat financial matters rationally and meticulously. Also, the 8th house of your horoscope is the house of rebirth, the house of the phoenix bird, and for you, this is a period when you can literally be reborn in a new image. This is a time when you can find yourself in a new role, understand the importance and value of life itself and your opportunities. Also, the 8th house is the house of passion, and Saturn in this sector cools our passions, making us more pragmatic and at the same time strong. That is, it can remove from our lives not the passions that made us weak. Someone during this period may consciously give up some passion, for example, a passion for gambling. In general, for you, this is a time when Saturn conducts a review of how correctly, from a legal point of view, all your financial issues are resolved, whether all your documents are in order, whether your rights are protected, how rationally you use the money that comes into your hands. Libra. In your horoscope, starting from March 2023 to the present moment, Saturn has passed through your 6th astro field, introducing some limitations, stricter rules, a certain asceticism into matters related to your work. Here there could have been an intense work schedule, great responsibility, a heavy load or difficult relationships in the collective, a feeling of loneliness in the collective. Here there could have also been a difficult search for work when you had to settle for less than you expected, or some external rules, external events, laws, limitations could have influenced your affairs. Here there could have also been an additional load associated with organizing living conditions in your life. For example, moving, a difficult period of adaptation to new conditions, or the necessity to care for someone, for example, for elderly parents, or you might have had a child who, accordingly, required a lot of your efforts. Saturn in this sector could also have influenced your healthy lifestyle. Here there could have been some limitations, for example, a treatment process when you had to limit yourself in something, adhere to some special daily routine or schedule for taking medication, or limit yourself in terms of nutrition, adhere to some diet that is beneficial for you. That is, give up some product that you love because it is not good for you. Or here there could have been financial expenses on issues related to health. For example, expenses on dentistry, or on a massage course, or some special dietary supplements. And now, in May 2025, Saturn is transitioning into a new sign, into your 7th astro field, the sector of your partnership relationships, and it will be here until mid-April 2028. Saturn is in opposition to your sign. That is, in fact, it becomes opposite you. In astrology, this aspect of Saturn is called the gaze of Shani. That is, when it stands opposite us and in fact looks at us. Shani is one of the names of Saturn, and the gaze of Shani is indeed heavy. Which spheres of life will Saturn take up here? What should you pay attention to? The first is getting rid of illusions and shadows in relationships. Saturn teaches us to see our partners, a partner in our personal life, our friends, business companions, as they are, without rose-colored glasses, without an image invented by us. This is a time when we objectively assess what we give in relationships and what the partner gives us, since any relationships are built on the principle of you give me, and I give you. This is a time when we move from illusions, delusions in relationships. We see what thoughts the partner instilled in us. Did they instill in us feelings and a complex of guilt? Did they instill in us that we will perish without them? And for such relationships, in which there is quite a lot of manipulation of each other, for such relationships, this period is difficult. It brings all the essence of the relationships to light, and this can give disappointment in the very image of relationships that are not fairy tales from our childhood, where after marriage everyone lives long and happily. And considering that this transit of Saturn will be special, since in this same sector of the horoscope the planet Neptune will be located, and Neptune is the higher octave of love, it is the ideal, and Saturn is the reality, it is the truth, then this is a time when it simply won't be possible to wear rose-colored glasses, even if we ourselves want it. This is a time when honesty, truth, will be the fundamental principle of any relationships. In matters of work, this is a very good period for such work, the essence of which is working with clients. This includes a beauty salon, providing any services, informational, intermediary, or consultations, working with regular clients. Here there will be development. However, clients can be quite demanding at the same time, but precisely their demanding nature will help develop your professionalism. The transit of Saturn through the 7th astro field does not mean that you need to take everything upon yourself. That is, here you need to clearly distribute who is responsible for what in a pair, in relationships, in personal life, or at work, who is responsible for which sector. That is, Saturn in this sphere expects that people will work together to achieve a certain result. Nevertheless, Saturn is a heavy planet, so it still introduces some limitations related to relationships. For example, a person gets married, and that's it. Now after work you can't just go for a walk with your friends. You need to go home because soon your spouse will come home from work and you need to cook dinner together. And in general, during this transit, periodically there may be a feeling that other people or the affairs of other people, that they influence you and introduce some limitations into your life. However, precisely this period will help you build honest, mutually beneficial, open relationships, both in the business sphere and in the sector of personal life. Also, Saturn symbolizes the past, so during this period you can revive some of your ideas related to partnership relationships from the past, or restore some of your relationships that had ceased for a time. Scorpio. The previous transit of Saturn, which lasted starting from March 2023 until the present moment, this transit of Saturn passed in a favorable aspect relative to your sign. It affected the 5th astro field of your horoscope, and here it was more helping you than limiting you in any way. Nevertheless, Saturn here set before you 3 main tasks. The first is issues related to children, responsibility for your children and their upbringing, for small children. And as for adult children, here Saturn checked how honest the relationships between you are, whether you know how to manage, to influence your children not with the help of power, but with the help of personal example, honesty before them, and also the ability to be a friend to them. The second task is the task to determine yourself in the sector of personal life, to choose a partner, and to really seriously relate to these relationships. Also, the third task is the task to find a hobby for yourself, whatever it may be. This may relate to work, to find work that allows you to embody your creative projects in reality. Or it may be simply an interest. Now Saturn for 3 years transitions into your 6th astro field and sets before you completely different tasks. The first sphere that Saturn will touch is the sector of a healthy lifestyle and our lifestyle in general. And whatever state of health you have now, here it is not necessarily about problems. More precisely, it is not about problems at all. It is about the fact that Saturn sets before you the task of creating for yourself some rules of a healthy life, creating for yourself and adhering to some health program, moreover, a comprehensive program. This is both sufficient sleep, rest, a nutrition program, a program of sports activities, a daily routine, and all this taking into account your personal characteristics and needs. That is, here you do not need to follow how it is accepted or how it is fashionable now. You need to select what suits you specifically, compose a certain comprehensive program, and adhere to it. That is, here it is important to take into account your own capabilities and needs. It is easier for someone likes to do exercises at dawn, and someone goes to the gym at the end of the working day. Some products suit someone, and others suit others. That is, here it is important not to do as everyone else does, but to select what suits you specifically, a certain program of comprehensive health improvement. And all this, again, does not speak of any health problems. It reminds us that health and our physical condition is our main life resource, and it is necessary to take care of it. Saturn is the great ascetic, and here you need to avoid any excesses and extremes. For example, if you have not done any sports for 10 years, then you do not need to immediately start running a marathon. Saturn expects from us consistency, step by step, and patience. He loves schedules and routines, loves a timetable. For example, to create for yourself such a schedule that on these days of the week I go to the gym. On these days I walk in the evenings in order to walk the necessary number of steps. And on such and such days of the week I do a fasting day for myself, or, for instance, cook certain dishes for myself. That is, Saturn loves routine, schedule, and menu. The next sphere that Saturn will touch is issues of everyday life and how our life is organized on a daily basis. Saturn, again, loves order and schedule, so regarding household chores, it is desirable to create some rules for yourself. For example, cleaning on Saturdays or grocery shopping on Sundays, and of course, periodic cleaning of your apartment. Saturn, again, is an ascetic. He says that in fact we do not need much. We do not need the superfluous. We need everything to be organized clearly, conveniently, and structurally. Also, Saturn symbolizes elderly people, so here it is important to show care for elderly people, for example, for your parents or distant relatives, or to help in something your, for instance, elderly neighbor. The next sector that Saturn will touch is issues related to work. Here, Saturn demands from us professional growth, demands from us development, demands order, responsibility, and consistency in work affairs. Yes, often Saturn gives a lot of work, a big load. For example, this may be work that really requires thoroughness, perseverance, attentiveness, and control. In the negative, Saturn gives us hard work, hard physically or morally. For example, when there is a very difficult, intense work schedule, or difficult relationships in the collective, or the work itself by its nature is not suitable for us, and we every day, daily, perform a superhuman effort over ourselves. Or when there is a lot of work, and there are also a lot of household, family cares, and it is very difficult to combine this with work. Saturn also demands from us structure and a very clear division of duties. When it is clearly defined who does what, who is responsible for what, when duties are distributed in a very clear manner among, for instance, family members or in a work collective. However, a feature of this transit of Saturn is that in this same sector of your horoscope, Neptune will also be located, which blurs everything. And here we either do not want to do anything, perform some actions through effort, or, on the contrary, we are so immersed in our work, in our busyness. This may not be work in the direct sense of the word, but our busyness. We are so immersed in it that the boundaries are generally blurred. And we literally dedicate ourselves and all our time to what we are doing, especially if the work is really based on our inspiration, based on our love for the work. Therefore, in terms of work, this is a very favorable time to develop your professionalism, and also this is a very good period to create and develop your own business. Sagittarius. In your horoscope, Saturn is transitioning from the space of your fourth astro field into the fifth. And for you, this is very good news, because starting from March 2023 until the end of May 2025, Saturn was in one of the most difficult aspects relative to your sign. It was in the aspect of a square from your fourth astro field, and this could form some limitations and difficult tasks related to family affairs or related to the place of residence. This could be a period of renovation, moving, or construction, when you really need to invest a lot of time and effort into these processes. Here there could also be difficult family plots. Someone could enter into marriage. Someone could have a child. This is wonderful. These are good news, however. This is also additional responsibility. Someone could solve some problems related to relatives. And now all this remains in the past, and Saturn is transitioning into a favorable aspect relative to your sign. Now it is no longer a strict controller. It is an assistant in your affairs, and here it will remain until mid-April 2028. It will be in your fifth astro field. During the time of this transit, Saturn will make an exact aspect of luck relative to the natal sun of each of you. This will already depend on the exact date of your birth and the exact date. We will discuss this with you in the horoscope for the year and for the month more specifically. And yet, the favorable influence of Saturn from this sector you will feel throughout the entire period of this transit. However, Saturn is still a strict planet. It symbolizes responsibility and discipline. And considering that in this same sector of your horoscope the planet Neptune will also be located, this also speaks of the demand for honesty. And here you will have to work in three main directions. The first sphere of life is children, and a serious attitude towards your children, and in general to the issue of birth and upbringing of children. This is Saturn's demand to seriously relate to your role in the process of the formation of your child's personality and your influence on the future of your children. Here it is important to find the correct balance of strictness and love towards your child, and it is very important to be honest, to show by your personal example how it is necessary. And it is also important that the child knows that you love them, even if they do something wrong. Here it is important to show responsibility towards your child, even if life's roots with their mother or father and you have diverged in different directions. If you have adult children, then this is a time when you need to come to terms with the fact that it is time to let them go into adult life. That it is impossible to pave the way with straw in all matters for them. That they need to learn to live independently, learn from their own experience, and there is no other way. The second sector that Saturn will touch is issues of personal life. Here, Saturn expects that we will seriously relate to our personal life, that we will make a choice, that we will create a pair or make some other but responsible and considered decision. If you are in a pair, then this period will bring a transition of your relationships to a new level. Someone may enter into marriage, and someone, if already in a marriage, will feel that the relationships are becoming different, deeper, more responsible, and will understand that the time has come to give up even the very thought of considering other offers on the market of suitors and brides. Someone may make an internal decision for themselves that yes, we are together, and everything else, some hobbies, all this is not serious, and it's time to leave it in the past. For someone, this may play out as a time of memories of the former fire in their heart, or of a partner who is no longer nearby for some reason, because Saturn personifies the past. For someone, this period of Saturn's transit may play out as a cooling in the heart when we decide that that's it. We no longer want to take part in these games. We will give our love to something else, for example, our work, our hobbies, our children or grandchildren. That is, we can consciously make a decision that we no longer want to enter into relationships. For those who are in search of relationships, this is a very good time. You really will be able to choose that partner with whom you have similar views on life, with whom you can create long-term relationships. The third sphere of Saturn's influence is issues of creativity, hobbies, and interests. And since in this same sector of your horoscope the planet Neptune will be located, this is generally an amazing cocktail, because Neptune is ideas, it is creativity, it is such an internal desire, a need to create something, and Saturn is real earthly forms. Therefore, this is simply an amazing time to embody your ideas and plans in reality. This can manifest both through your work and through your hobby. For example, you can engage in design for other people, that is, as your work, or create design for your home space or your work office. Here we can talk about any plans, both work and creative. The essence is to create something in the material world based on your ideas and your inspiration. Capricorn. In your horoscope, Saturn is transitioning from the space of the third astro field into the fourth, and its attitude towards you will change. It will become stricter. Let's say first a few words about the past transit of Saturn, about the transit that began back in March 2023 and continues still until the present moment, until May 25, 2025. Let's say about this literally a few words so that you feel how exactly this transit of Saturn in the third astro field of your horoscope influenced your affairs, your life. It was in a favorable aspect relative to your sign. And yet, Saturn is a planet that introduces some limitations. And since the third house symbolizes our roads, here there were some limitations. That is, Saturn here, as if it narrows the space of possibilities, when, figuratively speaking, you can walk on this road. But on this one you cannot, it is blocked. It more strictly controlled your time. That is, instead of going to some meeting with unserious friends, it is better to go talk with serious people about important matters. This concerned both meetings and calls, everything more about business and much specificity. Here there could also be some specific road that you were forced to walk. For example, regularly visiting someone, helping someone buy groceries, or work could be related to the fact that you delivered some important documents to a state institution. That is, in your life there could be such a road that you were forced to walk. Or you could, through force, showing your willpower, start going for morning walks or runs. Also, this period could bring you the necessity to study new rules by which you now have to live and create for yourself some new system of habits. For some, this period could bring the necessity of learning. Now, in May 2025, Saturn is transitioning into a tense aspect relative to your sign. This aspect is called a square or a 90-degree angle. It is transitioning into your fourth astro field. It will remain until mid-April 2028. Which spheres of life will the influence of Saturn affect? The first sector is issues of real estate and place of residence. For some, this may be a move. For some, renovation, construction, the necessity to do something with your housing, or, for instance, the task to save money for new housing. Or you may encounter a feeling of limitations in your housing. For example, a feeling that your apartment has become cramped. Perhaps you will enter into marriage and your spouse will live with you, or a child will appear. That is, there will be a feeling that the home space has become cramped and you need to somehow expand. You need to think something. Or it may manifest as a high cost of rent or apartment payments that really take away a significant part of your income. or an understanding that it is necessary to do repairs. And preparation for this process may cause you the necessity to save money for it, or some other limitations. For example, a residence permit that does not allow you to be constantly in this place, but only temporarily, for instance, 6 months throughout a calendar year, or some other time, and you need to constantly control this so as not to miss the established deadlines. Or this may become a period when you purchase housing in a building under construction, make all the necessary payments, and will wait for this housing to be put into operation. That is, certain tasks related to the sector of real estate and place of residence will certainly be here. And Saturn demands from us to show responsibility, to show a serious approach. The second sector that Saturn will touch is family issues, issues of responsibility within the family. Responsibility for you is, of course, your second name, since Saturn is precisely the planet that gives you the ability to think systematically and to be responsible people. And here we are talking about responsibility within the family. For example, the task to help one of your relatives, to visit someone, to support, to take care of your parents or a new member of your family. Some of you in this period may face an internal question. What is more important, family or career? How to divide yourself and your time between these directions. For example, you may ask yourself, is it worth sending the child to kindergarten in order to already go to work and continue your development in your career? Or should you still continue to dedicate yourself to the family and upbringing of the child? Here is also the task to show respect towards your ancestors. For example, to put things in order on the grave of one of your ancestors, to put up a monument to honor the memory of this person. Here, in general, is the global task to revive such family and ancestral traditions. And in general, the transit of Saturn through the 4th house shows that your home is your support, your home and your family, so you need to approach everything here responsibly. This is also a time when you can process some documents that are somehow related to your family status or to your real estate, to your place of residence. For example, a residence permit or re-registration, for instance, of personal accounts for payment of utility services. For some, this period will bring the opportunity to work from home or change jobs due to a move. This is also a time when you can feel yourself fully as the head of your family and a person on whom each of your relatives can rely. Here before you is a global task, to take responsibility for where you live and how you live, and to arrange everything in such a way that it suits you and that it is convenient for other members of your family. Aquarius. For your sign, Saturn is transitioning from the space of the 2nd astro field. The transit of Saturn that began in March 2023 and continues until the present moment, until May 25, 2025, here Saturn was in your 2nd astro field, in your financial system, issues that are related to debts, loans, with receiving income, with the distribution of your incomes and your financial responsibility. It conducted an inspection here. Now it is transitioning into your 3rd astro field, and for you this is good news, because Saturn in this sector will be in a favorable aspect relative to your sign. Here it is no longer a strict inspector, it will help you. And this transit of Saturn through the 3rd astro field will last from May 25, 2025, until April 2028 with a small break. And as soon as Saturn changes signs, you will feel that much has changed, that it has become easier. During the past transit of Saturn from March 2023 until the present moment, you could encounter some limitations in financial matters. These could be internal limitations, like self-discipline, when I consciously refuse some expenses because I understand that I need money for more important matters. I limit myself in something, or I invest money in myself, in my development, in order to receive some profit from this in the future. These could also be external limitations that disciplined you. For example, these could be some limitations related to banking issues, investments, or some rules of law that influence the possibility of you receiving profit. Now this remains in the past, and Saturn over the next 3 years will provide you with assistance in matters that are related to your development. It will promote your initiatives, but such of them that are justified and responsible when not just a person suggests, "Let's do something." But they really have a plan, they have thought through how to do it and what it may lead to, They have thought through all the options and a step-by-step plan for the development of these processes. On which specific spheres of life can this transit of Saturn be reflected for you? The first sector is the circle of communication. Yes, Saturn shows us reduction, compression, that is, the circle of your communication may shrink. Saturn will eliminate ineffective forms of communication. Chatting about nothing. No, let's better talk about business. Also, Saturn symbolizes responsible, adult, mature people, mature personalities, so precisely such people will appear in your circle of communication. It symbolizes serious people who are responsible, who know how to keep their word, with whom you can have dealings, or people who, so to speak, are verified by time. The second sphere that Saturn will touch is issues of learning. Saturn loves labor, discipline, persistence, and in this case, in this sector of your horoscope, this is realized through the information environment. Saturn loves long-term, serious projects with far-reaching plans and goals. This is not courses like how to become a psychologist in 2 months. Here we are talking about fundamental education or, for example, studying a foreign language. This is not conversational language courses. This is fundamental education starting from the basics, from the alphabet and grammar. In general, any forms of learning are welcomed here, but it is important to relate to this seriously. Or, Saturn in this sector can help you become a teacher. If you have really already become a master of your craft, a professional, then probably the time has come to share your life and professional experience. But again, here we are talking about something fundamental. That is, this is teaching, training, mentoring, not just in the form of advice, recommendations, but really you can create some own plan of learning. The time of this transit of Saturn can become for you a period when you will receive some certification, take exams, receive certificates, diplomas, or licenses, or some other documents that help, for instance, to conduct your own business. All these are themes of Saturn in the third astro field. The third sphere that Saturn will touch here is issues related to means of transportation. Someone in this period will purchase a new car, and someone will purchase their first car. And Saturn here requires a justified approach, not just to buy a car, and then everything will somehow resolve itself, no. You need to think in advance where you can park it, whether you have a parking space, where the service station is located, and what types of insurance policies exist and which one suits you. And also, Saturn here requires expediency. That is, an understanding of for what purposes you need a car and the correspondence of the car to your goals and needs. For example, if you live in a mountainous area and drive along mountain serpentines, then probably a convertible will not suit you since stones, small or large, often fall from the mountains. Or if you have a large family, then probably a small 2-seater car will not suit you. That is, Saturn requires expediency, and not just the acquisition of a car that you like externally. Considering also that in this same sector of your horoscope the planet Neptune will be located, which gives an unusual vision, then for someone this may play out as an unusual means of transportation. Also, transiting Saturn shows us the sphere of our responsibility, and for your sign, these are issues related to documents, order in affairs, in planning, the presence of specific plans for the day, moreover, with an indication of time. Also, these are relationships with people. Here it is important to be a person who is obligatory, who keeps their word. And also to improve relationships with brothers and sisters. In terms of health, this is the task to develop mobility, develop flexibility, to take care of your joints. Yes, Saturn in this sector can give some limitations when, like this, I can turn my head, but like this, already know, especially in matters related to the neck and shoulder joint. Therefore, it is important to devote time to sports activities that are aimed at developing mobility and flexibility. The time of this transit is a good period to start developing your own ideas and also your own business. Pisces. Yes, Saturn with a heavy tread passed through your sign starting from March 2023. It was located and still continues to be located in your sign. This is not an easy time, not a light one. Saturn in your sign gave you an additional load, an additional level of responsibility, a new level of responsibility, and not only for yourselves. It could remove from you all masks, all contrived images, exposing the very essence. you could encounter a feeling of loneliness, even if in fact this is completely not so, and you are surrounded by close and loving people. Then internally you could have a feeling that you are alone with this world and with yourself. You had a feeling that only you yourselves are for yourselves, and only on yourselves you can rely, and only yourselves decide something in your destiny and bear responsibility for it. And believe me, in that which concerns the transit of Saturn through the sign of Pisces, here I, perhaps like no other astrologer, not only know this but also live it together with you. Since in the sign of Pisces I have not only the Sun but also the Moon, Venus, and Mercury. Therefore, I live all this together with you. However, here, if you understand the demands of Saturn, its expectations, and do not go against it but go together with it, then this time could be used with great benefit for yourself, because Saturn is the most material energy of our world, and precisely the energies of Saturn help to clothe our dreams and our plans in real earthly form. Yes, it is not easy, but nevertheless, it is precisely Saturn that gives us a grandiose result. For example, during the time of Saturn's transit through the sign of Pisces, I wrote a book about Saturn. This is not about astrology. It is a book in the style of fantasy or magical realism. However, in our world, nothing lasts forever, and the difficult transit of Saturn for our sign, difficult both from a physical point of view and emotionally, is coming to an end. And already on May 25, 2025, Saturn, for now not for long but already, will exit the sign of Pisces. Then in the first days of September, it will return here again, and in February 2026, it will leave this sign for many years. And now Saturn is transitioning into your second astro field, and the directions it will touch and how to cope with all this. The second house of our horoscope symbolizes our finances, our assets, and our resources, and accordingly, Saturn here will take up the revision, inspection of our financial affairs. How seriously do we approach this issue? Do we control our financial life, or do money just go somewhere? How transparent are our mutual settlements with other people and the state? Do we fulfill our financial obligations on time, or do we miss the deadlines allotted for making some payments and then overpay? That is, paying also an additional commission or a fine. Saturn in this sector expects from us long-term planning and investment of our resources in long-term projects. For example, regarding the affairs of the second house of the horoscope, here Saturn expects from us that we will rationally use our resources, that we will learn to save money. Yes, possibly the amount that we can allow ourselves to save in some reporting period. For example, during a month, possibly this amount is completely insignificant compared to the cost of that thing for which we are saving money. For example, if we are saving money for housing, but per month we can save a completely insignificant amount compared to the total cost of this housing. Nevertheless, if we consistently, patiently from each of our incomes, set aside at least a small amount for the realization of our dream, our plan, our purchase, then Saturn will help us collect the money, and even faster than we expected. That is, Saturn in this sector expects from us consistency, patience, and purposefulness. Also, Saturn in the second astro field of the horoscope requires order and accounting of our resources. That is, to know exactly in which account, in which currency, you have certain amounts stored, to know in which purse, in which pocket, in which wallet you have money. Also, Saturn expects from us responsibility. Therefore, if for some time we lived not at our own expense, for example, at the expense of some social benefits, or at the expense of our parents or spouse, then now probably we will have to readjust. For example, a person temporarily received social benefits related to maternity leave, and now this period is ending, and the person is already going to work and starts earning money themselves. Or, for example, lived at the expense of a spouse, and now suddenly they started to reproach for the fact that we spend too much money, and we decide that we do not want to report to anyone, we will earn money independently. Also, Saturn in any sector of our horoscope demands from us the correspondence of form and content, and in the second astro field, it expects from us that we will not act for show. For example, if the level of our financial security does not yet allow us to live at a very high level, then we do not need to spend money on attributes inherent to this financial level simply in order to show this to other people, to manifest such a Vanity Fair. That is, Saturn demands from us to be someone, and not just to seem, not to try to produce such an impression. Also, Saturn in this sector expects that we will not spend money on such items that do not correspond to our goals. For example, if you want to find a job in some prestigious company, really a high post, then you, of course, need corresponding attributes. You need a good suit. You need some watches, jewelry, that is. You need to produce a corresponding impression. Therefore, acquiring such things is possible and necessary. But if we just want to acquire some expensive things that in fact do not correspond to our goals, then Saturn expects that we will refuse such purchases, understanding that they are not rational. In general, the transit of Saturn through the second house is a time when it is better to live modestly, thriftily, and spend money rationally. Also, Saturn from this astro field of the horoscope will give a tense aspect relative to your 8th house. Therefore, this is a time when you should not be afraid of financial responsibility. That is, this is a time when you can take a loan, a mortgage, for those things that you really need. And since the second house of our horoscope symbolizes not only money, but also our resources in general, and our main resource is still our physical energy, therefore Saturn expects that we will engage in getting ourselves in shape, literally. Saturn in the second house means, I am in shape, I am in good physical shape. Therefore, this issue is worth paying attention to. Also, regarding health and nutrition, Saturn in the second house expects that we will act according to some routine, a routine of sports activities and proper nutrition according to a schedule, without any excesses, since Saturn is the great ascetic. It says that in fact we do not need so much in terms of nutrition, and it is better to choose some simple dishes without excesses and without unnecessary embellishments. If to characterize the transit of Saturn in one phrase, then this is a period when we learn financial responsibility.